Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
Pairs Chuti Pack රුපියල් 37ක වාසියක්. දැන් රුපියල් 145යි.
හරිම සුළුයි.
On First at 9 tonight, this Tuesday, the 13th of December 2022. Universal access. President Ranil Wickremesinghe highlights the importance of changing the structure of the university system to create universal access to university education.
Firstly, I think you will have to discuss among yourselves what is the role for the state universities. We are looking at a 25-year long-term program.
Addressing concerns. A task force to be set up to prevent school children and university students from the usage of dangerous and narcotic drugs. Election or not? Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa reiterates its calls for an election.
The best way to restore legitimacy is to go for an election.
But the government says elections will be held once the economy is restored.
If the economy is not restored, there won't be people to vote for any of the parties who are contesting.
Port performance. Hambantota International Port surpasses 500,000 mark on roll-on, roll-off cargo by the end of November.
As far as the future is concerned, we'll be concentrating a lot more on increasing the transshipment volumes of ro-ro cargos.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Suzanne Shinali. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, and you are joining us on First at 9, bringing you the latest updates. Now, tonight's leading story is President Ranil Wickremesinghe saying the structure of the university system needs to be changed to create universal access to university education. Addressing a meeting with officials of the higher education sector, the president advised the vice-chancellors of local universities to implement an organized program to prevent ragging at universities. The president also said that the National Youth Platform is a great opportunity for the youth to present their vision of the country's future to the government.
A meeting with the officials of the higher education sector, including the vice-chancellors of local universities, were held in Colombo under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
We are from next year going to play a more active role in climate change. There will be a large number of laws that come in. So I think the universities can also be galvanized. In addition, we want to have a university for climate change, which will basically be a postgraduate university for the whole Africa, Asia, everywhere. So we can have part of them be postgraduate, masters or doctorates, but a fair number will be people who come there, do a 3-week course, 1-month course, 2-month course, officials from different countries, and go back. So something like 1,500 places for that really works out to about 10,000 or 15,000 passing through. I want major multilaterals to be informed because they can be the stakeholders and they can pay for the people who come. So that hopefully we can get that university together with a part in Maldives. But when that begins, when the project is to be done, I will speak to you all. So far there is no university which deals with climate change. Stanford has got one school which they started 2 years ago. So this is a good opportunity to build on this. But outside that, what I want to talk to you is we'll be looking for a organized program to stop ragging, which will also start sometime next year, both on ragging and drugs, which will have to play a role in the universities. So those headaches we'll give you later. At the moment, the biggest event is how do we make Sri Lanka regional hub for education? On one hand, we have to look at the role of the present universities. How are we going to adjust to it? On the other hand, we are opening out for non-government universities. So there will be competition. Firstly, I think you will have to discuss among yourselves what is the role for the state universities. Are we going to be mainly focusing on first degrees, or are we looking at the postgraduate and first degrees. We are looking at a 25-year long-term program. That long-term program means that India will have at least another 300 to 400 million people. I think the whole from Indonesia onwards, there will be a large number. Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, India, Myanmar, and then on to Africa. So in the case of India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, they just can't be building more universities. Brick and mortar ones won't do for them. But if you build here, then you have to plan to get both the undergraduate degrees and the postgraduate degrees. So but we have to start planning now. And I think some of the foreign universities will also come in here. If you all also want to work, certainly go ahead. So when you look at that, then you must be able to manage your own finances. You ask me, what do we do about the students who are sent in now for undergraduate courses? Whoever is sent in through the government funds. So we'll fund the students instead of the institutions. You all work out where you get the rest of the funds. Government might give funds for research, for development. There may be other institutions. But basically you're looking at a complete change without in any way stopping the universal access to education in this field.
Cabinet spokesperson Dr. Bandula Gunawardena says a task force will be set up on the prevention of usage of dangerous and narcotic drugs to prevent school children and university students from the drug menace in the country. Addressing the Cabinet media briefing today, he said that Justice Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa and Minister of Public Security Derana English have been instructed to expedite the process of its establishment.
At the Cabinet meeting last evening, approval was granted to a proposal to upgrade the urban councils of Ampara and Mana to municipal councils. In October this year, the Cabinet approved taking measures to convert the urban councils in several districts into municipal councils without spending additional allocations and utilizing the existing infrastructure facilities and human resources.
ගරු අග්‍රාමාත්‍යතුමාට නියම කළා අද පවතින ප්‍රාදේශ සභා වෙනුවට ඒ සියලුම ආයතන නගර සභා බවට පත් කරන්න පුළුවන්ද කියන එක පිළිබඳ කරුණු අධ්‍යයනය කරලා ඉවරලා අලුත් සංශෝධනයක් ඉදිරිපත් කරන ලෙස අග්‍රාමාත්‍යතුමාගෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටියා.
Meanwhile, Cabinet approval was also granted to instruct the legal draftsman to prepare a bill to include articles in the Penal Code criminalizing sexual assault and all forms of sexual harassment, introduce a new section to give severe punishment for sexual harassment, and to make sexual bribery an offence. Government has also recognized the need to amend the Parliamentary Elections Act to include provisions specifying steps that can be taken in case of violation of the Code of Conduct for political parties, independent groups and candidates during elections, and to ensure that the Code of Conduct will remain in force for the duration for their tenures. It is also proposed to include provisions on allowing persons holding recognized special positions to vote at a special centre apart from the polling station allocated to them on the election day. Meanwhile, Cabinet gave the nod to sign a memorandum of understanding between Sri Lanka and the Maldives for technical cooperation relevant to the development of water supply and sewage drainage systems. Cabinet spokesperson Dr. Bandula Gunawardena also commented on discussions covering the use of dangerous drugs among university and school children.
විෂමද්‍රව්‍ය අන්තරාදායක ඖෂධ භාවිතය වළක්වාලීම සඳහා කාර්යසාධක බලකායක් කඩිනමින් පිහිටවන්නට ගරු අධිකරණ ඇමැතිතුමාටත් එවැගේම රාජ්‍ය ආරක්ෂාව භාර ඇමති ටිරාන් අලස් මැතිතුමාටත් විශේෂ උපදෙසක් ලබා දුන්නා.
A tense situation arose in Parliament today when opposition leader Sajid Premadasa questioned the legitimacy of the government and urged them to hold elections to restore legitimacy. In response, State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinga said the economy needs to be restored first before holding elections.
කොන්ස්ටිටියුෂනැලිටි කියන එක එකක් ලෙජිටිමසි කියන එක තවත් එකක් අපි පිළිගන්නවා ව්‍යවස්ථාමය ක්‍රියාදාමය ෆලෝ කරලා තමයි ජනාධිපතිවරයා පත් වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ නමුත් ඒක ජනතාවගේ අතර is it legitimate or not කියන එක ලෙජිටිමසි එක තීන් වෙන්නේ through people's sovereignty.
This is of course a legitimate government. You might not agree, you might disagree, but this is a legitimate government. But also, if you remember when the president was elected in parliament, you supported one candidate. If that candidate won, what would have been the situation? Then is it legitimate?
What I was trying to say is that the parliamentary procedures were followed. The constitutional procedures were followed as stipulated in the constitution. What I am trying to say, if one said that this administration was was legitimate. You all have lost the legitimacy through the resignation of a president who received a mandate of 6.9 million votes. That president has gone home. That president was thrown out of power. That was done through people's power. Please understand, all these powers are subservient to the people's power of the land. That is why the finance minister had to go home, the prime minister had to go home, the then prime minister, and the president had to go home.
ඔබතුමා කියපු කාරණේ අපි පිළිගන්නේ නැහැ, අපි එකග වෙන්නේ නැහැ. As a leader of the opposition, I don't think your position is also legitimate if you put into that shoes the way you talk. Because if you see the number of members who are with you in your opposition were never with you. So part of the 6.9 million voted for, that members are with you now. So then in that case, you also don't have a legitimate power from the people to sit on that seat. The problems you have raised now, if you see, is because our economy is weak now. You were offered the responsibility of being appointed as the Prime Minister. Whatever the reasons, you didn't accept it from the former President. So now, please, I urge you, let us restore this economy. People are suffering at the moment. The painful reforms you are going through have affected people in this country. So let us get together and restore this economy. If the economy is not restored, there won't be people to vote for any of the parties who are contesting.
The best way to restore legitimacy is to go for an election.
මැතිවරණ කොමිසමටත් අපි දැනුම් දෙනවා ජනවාරි මාසේ දරුවන්ගේ උසස් පෙළ විභාගය තියෙනවා. පෙබරවාරි මාසේ 23 වෙනිදා අවසන් වෙන්නේ. කොට මේවත් එක්ක කල්පනා කළා මේ මැතිවරණය පවත්වන්න කියලා හිටන්
ඉතින් දැන් මේ මැතිවරණ නීති සංශෝධනය ගැන කතා කරන්නේ රජය මැතිවරණයට බෝර දෙන්න තියෙන බය නිසා. ඒක තිත්ත ඇත්ත.
අද හවස තියෙනවා ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ ප්‍රධානත්වයෙන් මේ පක්ෂ නායකයින්ගේ රැස්වීම සියලු කාරණා එතෙන්දී එකඟතාවයකට ඇවිල්ලා මේ මැතිවරණය පවත්වන්න පුළුවන්.
පොලේ බහලා ගහන ගන්න තියෙන්නේ. අපිට එන්නේ කිව්වේ ජාතික ප්‍රශ්න ගැන සාකච්ඡා කරන්න. ලැජ්ජයි මේක කියන්නේ අපිට මොකක් හරි යටින් ගේමක් තියෙනවා.
ඒ ජාතික ප්‍රශ්නය ගැන කතා කරන වෙලාවේ මැතිවරණයත් අදාළයි එතෙන්දී කියන්න පුළුවන්.
Sri Lankan High Commissioner to India Milinda Murugoda held discussion with the Chief Coordinator for India's G20 presidency for 2023 on how Sri Lanka can engage with G20 countries during India's presidency. The discussion during that meeting focused on the possibility of understanding the G20 approach towards international financial cooperation and debt restructuring. The Sri Lankan High Commissioner also held talks with the Chairman of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India on economic integration between Sri Lanka and India. Sri Lankan High Commissioner in India Milinda Murugoda met with the Chairman of the Committee on External Affairs of the Indian Parliament, P.P. Chaudhary, in New Delhi today. The meeting was held keeping in line with the objective enhance cooperation at parliamentary level, boost parliamentary diplomacy stipulated in the Integrated Country Strategy for Sri Lanka Diplomatic Missions in India 2021 to 2023 policy roadmap of the High Commission. The discussion mainly focused on how to enhance interactions between the two parliaments through exchanges of committees and friendship groups. During the meeting, the High Commissioner and the Chairman also exchanged views on the current economic situation in Sri Lanka. Observing the deep and historic ties between the two countries, the Chairman of the Committee on External Affairs of the Indian Parliament said India has always stood by Sri Lanka in keeping with its neighbourhood first policy. Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan envoy in India also met with the Chief Coordinator of India's G20 presidency for 2023, Harshvardhan Shringla, in New Delhi yesterday. The discussion focused on various avenues through which Sri Lanka could engage with the G20 during India's presidency of the group. The discussion also focused on the possibility of understanding the G20 approach towards international financial cooperation and debt restructuring. India assumed the presidency of the G20 on 1st of December this year for a period of 1 year, and under its presidency, India is expected to host over 200 G20 meetings in 56 cities across the country starting from December 2022. Meanwhile, in a recent meeting, High Commissioner Murugoda held discussions with the Chairman of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India, Dr. Bibek de Broglie. The Sri Lankan envoy stressed the importance of economic integration between Sri Lanka and India and inquired as to how the Council could assist in that process. In response, Chairman de Broglie extended an invitation to the Sri Lankan High Commissioner to address the Council on a mutual convenient date on matters pertaining to economic integration and cooperation. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijayasekara said the Umaia Multipurpose Development Project is expected to be connected to the national grid by June 2023. Taking to Twitter, Minister Kanchana said that a meeting was held with officials of the Iranian engineering company Farab to discuss the progress of the Umm Oya project. Accordingly, those representing Farab have ensured that the construction would be completed by the end of April 2023 and would be connected to the national grid by June 2023. The project is expected to add 120 megawatts of hydropower to Sri Lanka's national grid. The agreement on the Umm Oya project was signed in April 2008 between the Irrigation Ministry and the Farab Energy and Water Projects of Iran and Farab International FEZE, collectively with a 5-year contract period plus 1-year maintenance period. Welcome back. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka cautions the public to remain vigilant of individuals who financially defraud people by giving false information through fraudulent phone calls, text messages, email messages, and social media networks. Issuing a statement, Central Bank requests the general public to not deposit money into bank accounts of unknown parties without proper verification.
Issuing a statement, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka stated that in recent times, a rapid increase has been observed in the number of complaints filed by aggrieved parties in relation to defrauding money from individuals by giving false information through fraudulent phone calls, text messages, email messages, and social media networks. The statement further read that the suspects promised the victims of directing them to foreign employment or asking them to pay custom duties to receive parcels containing various valuable goods. The Financial Intelligence Unit emphasizes to the public not to deposit money into bank accounts of unknown parties or remit money through other means without proper verification. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka mentioned that the scammers who engage in such practices may request information such as the personal identification number, card verification values, one-time passwords, user IDs, or passwords used in mobile banking in order to proceed with such transactions. But CBSL warned the public that such confidential information should not be shared with any third party. In the event of receiving these types of phone calls or text messages, the public is requested to inform the CBSL's Financial Intelligence Unit via 011 247 7124 or 011 247 7509.
A total of 10 students have been arrested over the assault of former Vice-Chancellor of the University of AdaDerana, Professor AdaDerana Ratna. According to police media spokesperson Nihal Thalduwa, the suspects were produced before the Kandy Magistrate Court today and were remained until the 22nd of December. On Saturday, Professor AdaDerana Ratna and his son were assaulted by a group of university students near his official residence and were hospitalized due to injuries. Following the incidents, the police launched an investigation to uncover the suspects involved in this incident. Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University, Professor Terence Madhujit, had stated that an inquiry was launched at the university level, that subsequently 12 students were suspended pending investigations. Further, President Ranil Wickremesinghe ordered all relevant authorities yesterday to conduct a comprehensive inquiry into the assault on the former Vice-Chancellor of AdaDerana University and to take necessary action. Hambantota International Port surpassed 500,000 mark on roll-on, roll-off cargo by the end of November this year, amounting to 505,185 units. This is a 4% increase compared to last year, which was achieved amidst economic challenges globally and locally. Speaking to AdaDerana English Chief Executive Officer of Hambantota International Port Services, Ravi Jayavikrama, said that great focus will be exerted on increasing volumes. Sri Lanka's southern port Hambantota reached the milestone of handling over 500,000 roll-on, roll-off cargoes units by the end of November this year. According to Hambantota International Port Group, the port has transshipped 505,185 units to and from the regional ports in the past 11 months, and these transshipment volumes have been achieved amidst a ban on vehicle imports to the country. Further, this is a 4% increase in roll-on, roll-off cargo compared to 2021 amidst economic challenges globally and locally. Last year's transshipment figure up to November was 484,467 units. This year, 223 roll-on, roll-off vessels called at the port with cargo from India, South Korea, Japan and the Middle East for transshipment mainly to East and South Africa, Mexico and the Middle East, Chile and Japan.
Although the country was going through lots of hardships over the year, we did not lose a single day in stoppages in the port of Hambantota. As far as the future is concerned, we'll be concentrating a lot more on increasing the transshipment volumes of ro-ro cargoes as well as bunkering through the port of Hambantota. In addition, we hope to start off or increase the number of vessels coming to the out anchorage as well as the OPL over the next few years, as well as increasing the throughputs on bulk cargoes for the cement manufacture, and hopefully start on container cargo operations also.
Sri Lanka shares slipped today on a dull sentiments ahead of the holidays. All shares price index closed 0.34% lower at 8,832.14. The S&P SL20 index closed 0.35% lower at 2,819.81. So far in December, ASPI gained 2%. The ASPI gained 0.5% in November after losing 13.4% in October. The market witnessed a turnover of 1.3 billion rupees, lower than this year's daily average turnover of 2.9 billion rupees. The market saw a net foreign inflow of 15 million rupees. John Keells pulled the index down to close at 2.6% lower at 14.1 rupees. Richard Peary's lost 3.3% to close at 26 rupees and 10 cents, and 8 pence closed 2.1% lower at 138 rupees and 3 cents a share. Now let's take a look at how the rupee has fared against other major currencies in the world. European Union member states have agreed to adopt a mechanism that will impose a tariff on imports of polluting goods such as iron, steel, cement, fertilizer, aluminium and electricity. The world's first scheme aiming to support European industries as they decarbonize, known as the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, will cover industrial imports from the regional bloc's 27 member states, targeting the highest polluting products. After all-night negotiations, the European Union struck a political deal today to impose a carbon dioxide emissions tariff on imports of polluting goods such as steel and cement, a world-first scheme aiming to support European industries as they decarbonize. Negotiators from EU countries and the European Parliament reached a deal at around 5 a.m. in Brussels on the law to impose carbon dioxide emissions cost on imports of iron and steel, cement, fertilizer, aluminium and electricity. As such, companies importing those goods into the EU will be required to buy certificates to cover their embedded CO2 emissions. The scheme is designed to apply the same CO2 cost to overseas firms and domestic EU industries, the latter of which are already required to buy permits from the EU carbon market when they pollute. European Parliament's leader negotiator on the law, Mohammed Shahim, said that border tariff would be crucial to EU efforts to fight climate change. The aim of the levy is to prevent European industry from being undercut by cheaper goods made in countries with weaker environment rules. It will also apply to imported hydrogen, which was not in the original EU proposal, but which EU lawmakers pushed for in the negotiations. Some details on the law, including the start date, will be determined later this week in related negotiations on reform of the EU carbon market. Currently, the EU gives domestic industry free CO2 permits to shield them from the foreign competition, but plans to phase out those free permits when the carbon border tariff is phased in, to comply with the World Trade Organization rules. Now the blame game continues days after deadly clashes erupted at the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, and now the crossing has reopened. More on this after this short break. And that's all from us at First at 9. Do join us again tomorrow at the same time. Anuradhi Wickramasinghe is coming up next with World News Tonight. Stay safe and have a good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.